Lisa here. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to my weekly deck reviews. Please forgive the cold voice. My voice is going to go a bit during this video. I've learned that in the last one, but please be patient with me. I will try not to cough too much. I'm just getting over what I am affectionately calling the death cold, as I mentioned in yesterday's Self-Worth Saturday video. But I really want to talk about the decks that I have been working with. If you are new here, I like to work with one tarot and one oracle deck weekly. That may change at some point, but probably not soon. And what happened was, in my last video, announced that I was going to be working with the beautiful Alice Tarot by Baba Studios. And the Enchanted Map Oracle by Colette, Baron-Reid and Jena Dellagrotaglia. And then I promptly got sick. So I've actually worked with these decks for 2 weeks because there were several days where I was not pulling cards or doing anything because I was basically in bed coughing a lot. So that's what I did. But the good news was I did get a little extra time to play with these because I didn't feel like I got my full week. So I have worked with these for the past 2 weeks, off and on, but mostly pretty consistently. And this week, definitely, I got lots of consistent play in with both decks. So I'm going to talk about my experience with both of these and how I used them and worked with them. And I'm also going to tell you what I'll be working with next week. So with that said, please put up with my frequent sips of my water so that I can keep my voice lubricated. And we're going to jump right in after a sip. I've also just taken a swig of cough syrup. We'll see if that helps. Not likely, but we'll try. So firstly, I have to say that when the Alice Tarot came in, I was over the moon, which is interesting because when I pre-ordered this deck, when I found out it was being reprinted by Baba Studio, I jumped on it real fast because everybody loved it that had it. But to be honest, I wasn't all that familiar with Alice or the original stories, which these cards are based on. So I was a little nervous that I was going to regret this purchase, but then I was like, it's a Baba deck, like, if I don't like it, somebody will. So I sprung for it anyway. When it showed up and I got my hands on the cards, look at the backings and the box. When I got my hands on the cards, I was over the moon instantly. And here's why. While I was waiting for this deck to come back out, I picked up a digital copy of Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass. And I read those over the winter as an adult. I'd never read them as a child. And I have to say, somebody was on drugs when they wrote that book. Or that book is about being on drugs. There's some drugs in Alice in Wonderland. But, okay, I'm jesting. I don't actually know if that's true. But it felt like a really crazy world. And I would read it before bed, and it felt like I was like almost drifting off into crazy dreams while I was reading it. But here's what's interesting. Even though the books didn't blow me away, I was a little bit like, I don't know what just happened. What did I just read? Even though I had that experience, the second I had these cards in my hand and started flipping through them, they brought those stories to life for me. Every card, I was like, I know what scene that's from. I know what character that is. I know what's happening, which is amazing because I didn't actually think I would retain the details of those stories nearly as well as I apparently did. But the books, the art in these cards is so vivid and beautiful and so true to the stories that it took no guessing to figure out what I was looking at in these cards. So that was the first thing that really caught my attention and got me super excited. The other thing is that these cards, if you haven't seen them, have a very subtle cold foil stamping on them. So there's these metallic accents throughout that the camera does not really do justice to. Now, I never had the original. I've heard that this is a subtler foil accent than what was on the original cards. But I actually really appreciate that because I don't know that I would want it too glammed out. I think it would make it difficult to look at and it would distract from the realist feel I get when I look at the artwork. I have to say, the way that the images, of course I pick one that's not doing it, the way that the images pop out of the frames, out of the borders, give you this sensation of being literally pulled forward into this world. It's amazing. And I was excited enough about my experience just in the first couple of days having this deck in my hands that it actually put all my other Baba decks, my other two Baba decks kind of to shame. Now I have the Bohemian Gothic Tarot, which I do enjoy, and the Fairy Tale Tarot, which is out of print. This deck, and the fact that it is all about the same world, the same universe, the Jabberwock. This deck did such a beautiful job of pulling me into Alice's world and her imagination and like her experiences that I was like, this is my favorite Baba deck, no question about it. To the point where I'm actually considering maybe rehoming my Fairy Tale Tarot at some point, because I just realized that this has me so enchanted, and this is the feeling I wanted from the Fairy Tale Tarot and I haven't quite got. Look at this little hedgehog down here. This deck does come with an alternative lovers card, so if I haven't shown it yet, let me pull. Okay, so it comes with, it was designed with the Walrus and the Carpenter as the lovers, which I actually love, which surprised me. I didn't know that I would love that. But the alternative lovers card, which is a little more romantic in feel, is this one with the two flamingos, and they make a heart with their necks. I like the Walrus and the Carpenter so much more because these two clearly have a partnership of some kind, and it's related to the stories, and I get where the author was going with it. So I've got this one in my deck right now, but this is the alternative, and I may switch it out at some point if I'm reading for other people, but since I'm reading with this deck mostly for myself, I don't feel the need to do that. Now, I know I've shown you like a bazillion of the cards, but first, there is a little white book, which to be honest, I haven't even read because I got the guidebook that comes with this deck. And it is amazing. This guidebook is so, so good. I have so much to say, and my voice is going to let me say it if I have anything to say about it. So when I got this guidebook, I could not put it down, which is saying something, because I have to say that it was a chore for me to work my way through the Fairy Tale Tarot guidebook. Not because the writing was bad, but just because there was so much depth to every single story that it felt like a lot to take in. Whereas this guidebook is all about Alice and Alice's world and about Lewis Carroll and the actual person. Lewis Carroll was a pen name. So the actual person is something Dodgson. What is his name? I keep forgetting his name. Charles Dodgson is actually the author's name. Lewis Carroll was the pen name. This book, I was so blown away by this book that I immediately messaged Heather, Geek Girl Does Tarot here on YouTube, because she'd bought this deck but had not gotten the book. And I was like, no, you need the book. You need to go get the book. And I showed her pictures and I talked about it. This book is so well done. So let me tell you why. There's a few things. For starters, it is extremely densely packed with information. There is a ton in here. It looks small, but it is smaller print, thin page, like nice pages, but they're thin. There's a lot of pages. So this book is actually 285 pages when you include the bibliography. It's full color. There's a wonderful introduction, including, and I've got this marked, so I'll take my little post-it note out of here, including some really wonderful Alice-themed spreads, which I've experimented with pretty much all of these. Yeah, I did Down the Rabbit Hole, I did the Caucus Race, the Tea Party. Yeah, I did all of these, and my own Wonderland. They were really great spreads. They were really fun to play with. There's also, as you move into the actual cards, there's so much here. For starters, when you move into the Major Arcana, you get a really wonderful overview that Karen has done on the entire Major Arcana and how it's put together. And she does an intro like this for every suit of the Minor Arcana as well, which I really appreciate. For each card, you get a quick little synopsis of what the scene is. So in the Fool, we have Alice chasing the rabbit down the rabbit hole. Then you get some traditional Rider-Waite-Smith meanings. And then you get some Alice meanings, because when you consider the world that these characters are from, there are some additional meanings you can play with and pull into, which I thought was really well done and made a lot of sense when you read about the stories. The rest of the page in the Fool card, for example, talks about how this all relates to the Fool, how it relates to the Alice meanings, and how it relates to the Rider-Waite-Smith meanings. And then there's a section, Further Notes, which I digested like crazy. It was so much fun to read. Further Notes is what gets into all the little bits and pieces of real Alice and Lewis Carroll or Charles Dodgson fan information. And then there would be little quotes from the book. There's reference notes. I'm making it sound very cerebral, but it was so much fun to read every single page. I did read this entire book cover to cover, and it was an absolute pleasure to do it. Now, in addition to the card meanings, which stay in depth all the way through the minor arcana, you also get some really cool behind the scenes photos. The production value in just making this deck happen, the amount of work that went into this is visible throughout the book. When you realize how well researched the deck is, how much of how big of Alice in Wonderland fans Karen and Alex must have been to put this together. It is a true labor of love, and it shows in every single page of this book. I really loved all the behind the scenes information. I was very excited to find out, though, that the last 60 pages or so of the book, 65 pages, is the Alice in Wonderland story and Through the Looking Glass story, abridged with text bits removed. So they didn't change the text. I have a little itch on my leg here, sorry. They didn't change the text, but they did remove bits of the text to make it shorter. But throughout the abridged version of the stories, which to me, my memory has all of the important scenes and relevant information is all there. So it would have had to have been the superfluous text, you know what I mean? Some of the fluff text that was removed. But throughout, there's thumbnails of the images of every single card in the entire deck, wherever they show up in the stories. That is the coolest freaking thing. When you are working with a deck that is based on a story like this, to see all of the scenes put into this context of the actual story was such a cool touch. And I ate this up. This was the funnest part of reading for me, was this end bit. And I'd already been working with the deck for a bit by the time I got to this section. But the fact that it's in there, it made me so happy that I splurged on the guidebook too. And this was not an inexpensive combination to pick up. The deck itself was a price, and then the book was another price. I will have a link to Baba Studios down below because this is still available for sale. Excuse me, I think I just burped a little. Peggy would be so proud. It's all the water and the swallowing. Anyway, the artwork is absolutely stunning. It's photo manipulated collage, but done so skillfully that it feels really quite real to look at. There's a vividness to Baba Studios artwork that is really hard to describe until you have it in your hands. It's so sharp and so vivid without feeling flat at all. It feels very three-dimensional. There's tons of depth, and I adore this deck. I have no complaints. It really, really blew me away. I actually really, really love the backings with all the gold. I don't plan to edge this deck. Oh, that's the other thing I wanted to tell you. And I'm already like halfway into my time, so I'm going to try to speed it up. But the cardstock is really, really lovely. It's very thin. This deck feels really easy to handle. It's a nice size. I don't have a standard tarot deck near me. This feels like a standard tarot size. I think it is just a smidge bigger. But this cardstock is really, really flexible. I'm just going to show you. It's really, really flexible, so you can get a really good bend if you're a rifle shuffler. So it rifle shuffles beautifully. There's no gilding or anything, but it feels sturdy. The Fairy Tale Tarot that I have does not feel this nice, but my Baba Studios deck does feel like this. So I really, really, really love this cardstock. It just feels sturdy. It feels flexible. It doesn't feel like it's going to chip really easily. I've worked with it a ton, and I haven't had any issues come up with the cardstock or how it handles or anything. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Love it so much. And Peggy found a small piece of fabric ages ago that was Alice themed. It's so cute. And I asked her to make me a bag out of it. She only had enough for one bag. She made me the one bag months and months and months ago, and I have been hoarding it, waiting for my Alice Tarot to come in. So it makes me super happy that this Alice Tarot has this beautiful custom little Peggy bag in Alice themed fabric. It makes me so, so happy. So treasure this so much. It's one of the things I'm the most excited about this year. It's just beautiful deck. The Oracle deck that I've been working with this week is one that I've worked with before. I've had this. This is one of my oldest Oracle decks, and it is the Enchanted map by Colette Baron-Reid, illustrated by Jena Dellagrotaglia. This is one of their first collaborations. I don't think it's the first. I could be wrong on that. But it's one of their first. I've considered trimming this deck, but if you look closely, there's a bit of a ragged edged look to the border. And I don't really want to cut that. And the idea is that it's got this like parchment feel border, which I actually kind of like, and ties in really beautifully with these little title words. Excuse me. I knew it was going to happen. The artwork is really, really lovely. But I really find this such a usable deck. I don't find myself having to rely on the guidebook, which is, by the way, really good. I'll show you that in a moment. I feel like I can really use this deck intuitively. Most of these keywords make sense, and the few that don't, I'm familiar enough with, having worked with this deck for a fair amount of time, that I get so much out of it now, like I know what they are. But most of them you can just take at face value and read intuitively if that's how you enjoy working with Oracle decks. The backs are these like weird compass things. I don't love the backs, to be honest. But I do love this artwork. They are glossy cards. They've held up really well. I have edged my deck in like a matching sort of linen color that sort of matches that parchment feel. But I really, really enjoyed working with this deck. It did not let me down even a little bit. I feel like it had given me the messages that I need when I need them. It worked really beautifully next to the Alice Tarot, so I liked how it played with that. So yeah, this is a solid one. I was a little concerned that I'd be over it because I have had it so long, but it's just such a solid reader for me, and it's so easy for me to work with, and I find it so nurturing that it's definitely sticking in my collection. The guidebook is meaty and quite good. There is an upright and reversed meaning for every single card, as well as a little short summary type phrase, and I found that in every single pull I would read the upright and reversed and kind of decide for myself what felt appropriate, what stood out to me the most in that moment. I have been using both of these decks, sometimes together, sometimes separately, as I work through the April Tarot challenge hosted by Lionhearts on Instagram. And it is a like sort of fairy tale theme this April, so it's like you're telling a story. And I've been really enjoying that. These both worked really well with that. It was really fun. And no complaints at all. But yeah, very, very happy with both of those. The Alice Tarot totally blew me away, so very pleased about that. Let's talk about what I'm going to be working with next week. And more fluids. So I'm actually really excited about this. This is the Dream Raven Tarot. This is what the backings look like. And this is the style of the artwork. This deck is by Beth Seilonen, who is the artist and author behind the Guardian Tarot, which is basically my favorite self-care, just for me deck. But I'm really, really excited to get to know this beauty. This one came out before the Guardian Tarot, but I hadn't really encountered it before. I actually got this in a trade at Northwest Tarot Symposium. And I find it's really whimsical. I love the color palette, but this deck is the reason I have not picked up the US Games Crow Tarot, because I have this beautiful one, and I'm like, do I need two crow or raven themed decks? Probably not. So I'm gonna play with this one and see how we get along. I have not done anything with it yet. I probably will trim this and trim the sides and the tops and keep the titles along the bottom. I think it would look really beautiful trimmed. It almost looks like it's like borderless cards that have been put on a background, if you know what I mean, with the way that it sits on there. So I think it would look really pretty trimmed. So I may do that. Probably will, because this is a nice, like, this is a pretty big sized deck. So I'm excited to get to know this one. The guidebook that comes with it, I should also be able to work my way through and read this week. But it looks like this. This is a Schiffer Publishing book. It's not full color, but there are nice illustrations in the book. And it doesn't look like it's overly weighty with the write-ups. This one does feel a little more true to Rider-Waite-Smith imagery than the Guardian Tarot. So I'm interested to see how well it does do with that. But at initial flip through, it looks like it's pretty Rider-Waite-Smith themed images. We shall see. And the Oracle deck, I did this on my random draw because I don't have any new decks to work with at the moment. So I pulled a random name generator to figure out which deck I was going to be working with this week, and it is my Affirmators Oracle. These are really affirmation cards, but they're very nurturing and supportive and playful and cheeky. They've got little messages on them. This will be a nice one to have throughout the week, I think, as I'm working with a new tarot deck. Because this one is just a pull a card, read the message, sit with it kind of deck. So I can really focus on the Dream Raven Tarot as far as my divination type messages go. I'm happy to pull this one back out again. This was a birthday gift for my 40th birthday from my big sister, and it turned out to be such a dark horse in the sense that it's really quite good. And I thought it was going to be one of those things where you kind of have fun and play with it. The only thing I don't love is that the cardstock is like super chipped in spots already. You can see the white showing there. I may need to edge it, but I'm nervous to do that because the fronts are so white on the borders. So I don't know what I'm going to do. I may trim the fronts and then edge it in black or something, but I don't know. I will say the cardstock is not awesome with this one. It's kind of thin and flimsy feeling. And the other thing I don't love about this deck is the box, because the box is sturdy, which is great, and it has the little ribbon, but it's a slide box and there's literally nothing to keep it in. Like, it doesn't stay. So sorry, my voice is horrible. But anyway, so I put it in one of these holographic Peggy bags so that I don't have to worry about it falling all over the place. So that's where it lives. But these are the decks that I will be working with this week. Oh, I didn't really talk reading cloth, but this is the reading cloth I used last week. It's got this really fun, colorful, swirly pattern on the front and a purple velvet for the back. I may keep working with this one for next week because I think the purple velvet would look really pretty behind the Dream Raven, or I might change it up. I haven't really decided and I didn't pick one out, so that's the plan. Alright, y'all, I have to go rest my voice now so it doesn't completely die, but I look forward to hearing from you guys all really soon. I'd be curious about your thoughts about my decks, either the decks that I worked with last week, which is the Alice Tarot, the Enchanted Map, or the decks I'm going to be working with this week. Do you have any of these decks? What do you think about them? How do you use them? Drop me a comment down below and let me know. I always love your feedback and the conversations that we get to have in the comments. So I look forward to hearing from you. Remember that if you are new here, to like, subscribe, and hit the little bell if you want to get notified of my sometimes spontaneous live chats and new videos. And I will talk to you all again very soon. Bye!